As I said, welcome to Unlocking Opportunity in Kentucky, How to Secure Your Medical Cannabis Business License. My name is Summer Thomas. I'm the VP of Regulatory Operations at Canna Advisors. I've been with Canna Advisors for around 6 years now. In that time, I've worked in dozens of states throughout the country. My background is in law, and I've worked with clients in business planning, financial modeling, license pursuits, just overall startup consulting in dozens of states. And Canna Advisors as a whole has worked with clients in 39 states. So pretty much anywhere there's a cannabis market, we have some experience. Canna Advisors was founded in 2012, so we've been in business now for over 12 years. So a lot of experience under the belt. We've gone through this license application process up and down more times than we can count. We're based here in Boulder, Colorado, but we work mainly nationally. We work nationwide. And our founders, Jay and Diane Zarkowski, started one of the first medical dispensaries here in Boulder years and years ago. My role today is just going to be as your moderator. I'll be leading kind of the Q&A here, and we have our expert on the line with us, Dalton Villette, Senior Project Manager here at Canna Advisors. Thank you so much for joining us, Dalton. I'll give you all a little bit on his background. Dalton's role is mainly helping and supporting our clients with all of their many needs in securing licenses for their cannabis businesses, also managing financial and business planning on top. Dalton's work in cannabis dates back to 2017 when he, in New Jersey's burgeoning adult use market. He also has a background in ethics, compliance, and law, which makes him, really a natural fit for helping businesses develop successfully in a regulated marketplace and, navigate this complex system. He also has a BA in political science and government from Drew University and a master's of studies in law from University of Colorado Law School. Dalton's really well equipped to guide clients through all the complexities in these markets. And just a little background info, when Dalton's not digging into the latest cannabis industry developments, he can be found voraciously reading, summiting Colorado's mountains, or checking out the latest movie in theaters. I'll also say that Dalton knows about every fact about every movie. So, if you have any questions about that, I welcome you to ask. He's a very knowledgeable fella all around. Thanks so much,
thank
Dalton.
you so much, Summer. And I'm excited to be chatting today.
Fantastic. Just a little admin info before we get things kicked off. This meeting will be recorded, and we'll send around that recording afterwards. So if you have to hop off earlier, want to share it around, please feel free. As we're going through, feel free to submit any questions that you might have. We'll circle back to those at the end, or we might even tackle them in the middle if we're feeling crazy. If we don't get to your questions, though, we'll make sure to respond to you via email so we can get all those questions answered. All right, with that, I guess let's go ahead and get rolling here. All right. So first off, just kind of want to set the stage. Like I mentioned, we have the Minnesota webinar coming up as well. There's a lot going on. There's Minnesota, there's Kentucky, potentially Delaware. I know there's a lot going on in the emerging markets world right now. So we thought it'd be good just kind of to set the stage of what's going on in Kentucky specifically. So Dalton, with all these new cannabis markets springing up all over the country, it can be hard to keep them straight. So what is going on in Kentucky right now? Where do we stand at this point?
Yeah, so Kentucky has made pretty substantial strides over the last year and a half, and has been really efficient, I would say, with their rollout of their regulatory structure without too much fanfare. I think we've all seen a number of states that really kind of capture the limelight when it comes to the rollout of their cannabis programs. Kentucky has really been focusing on actually making sure that the program is efficient more than anything.
Probably a good thing to stay out of the news, huh?
Yes, in this area, I would definitely say so. But we saw last year on March 31st, Governor Andy Beshear, after a lot of politicking and cajoling with other legislative members in Kentucky managed to sign Senate Bill 47 into law that legalized medical cannabis for Kentuckians starting January 1st, 2025. And this spring, Kentucky released a batch of regulation and an application guide so individuals can apply to the upcoming licensing round, which will be opening on July 1st, closing August 31st. And the first licenses from this lottery are going to be issued sometime in October.
Okay, great. Good to know. So the license period is right around the corner, and they're planning on the lottery being shortly thereafter, sometime this fall. So things are really moving quickly here in Kentucky. And so you mentioned that they're going to be having the application period and they'll have a lottery in October. Keeping in mind this is a lottery, is it worth applying? Is it worth putting a lot of time and effort into this application if it's going to be, by chance in a lottery, or what's the structure of this lottery process? Can you give us sort of some more details on, what to expect or what this lottery is going to hold?
Absolutely. And I really think that it is absolutely in your best interest to apply. And it's important to note this isn't just kind of a fully randomized lottery. This is a qualified lottery. In order to even be considered in part of the lottery process, you're going to have to submit a number of different plans and documentation and information necessary. Unqualified individuals or businesses, those who, for instance, don't have a property lined up, can't show that they have sufficient capital to actually get the business off the ground and running, or who just have plans that maybe are riddled with deficiencies or just kind of not up to the satisfaction of the Office of Medical Cannabis, will not be making it into this lottery. The way Kentucky has kind of created this licensing program, I would say, is pretty expertly threading the needle to kind of assess equity and professionalism. So they're not going to be giving out licenses to every single person who's going to be applying. And they also aren't trying to be overly restrictive or catering to a very specific, exclusive group of applicants. So absolutely, I'd say it's in your best interest to apply. The application fees, which are non-refundable, are on the lower end from what we've seen in a lot of different states. So the overall financial costs for at least the application portion are relatively minor. And again, it's important to remember this lottery does not apply for those who are interested in, let's say, the safety compliance facilities license, or the lottery might not even happen if they only receive a certain number of qualifying licenses for a given region or a specific license type.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely good to know who can apply and when. And you mentioned a safety compliance facility in there. What's a safety compliance facility? That's sort of an odd terminology.
Yeah, so this is basically the safety compliance facility has no license cap on it. So if you apply and you meet all of the qualifying materials and requirements to open up shop, you can be given a license. Basically, this is a testing facility. You would be serving as an intermediary prior to customer or patient purchases of any sort of medicinal cannabis or cannabis products, and making sure that you're testing for potency or any sort of contaminants on any of the cannabis that's coming your way from a cultivator or a
Gotcha.
processor.
Okay, that makes sense. And so which licenses then, can you kind of just give us an overview of what is available? How many of each can we expect in this lottery round?
Yes, so there are going to be multiple cultivator licenses. There's going to be a tier 1 cultivator, which is the smallest canopy size. There's going to be 10 of those licenses issued, 4 tier 2 cultivator licenses, 2 tier 3 cultivator licenses, 10 processor licenses, and 48 dispensary licenses.
Okay, perfect. And we have that chart here on the screen for everyone to follow along or grab that resource. Okay. So you said this is a lottery, but it's not just a normal lottery. It's a cool lottery. No, it's a vetted lottery. So what can I do to improve my odds? So is there a way I can still be more competitive than other applicants, even though this is a lottery system?
Yeah, so individuals do have a couple of options available for them. One of the biggest is for the dispensary licenses. The state has been broken up into 11 regions, and individuals or businesses can submit upwards of 11 applications for each of the 11 regions of the state. But the key thing here is you will need to show sufficient capital for each of these prospective medical dispensary locations. And you will need to have properties lined up for each of these locations too. And the sufficient capital requirements for a medical dispensary is $150,000. So you will need to showcase, because there is the potential you could win all 11, which would be phenomenal, but you obviously want to make sure that you have that $150,000 minimum for each of those respective locations in each of the 11 geographic regions. And for cultivators, you have the ability to apply for each of the different tiers that are being offered, that tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And the same criteria applies. You're going to need to have a property, and you're going to need to showcase a sufficient capital for each of these license types that you're going for, which can range based on the tier size from 50,000 to 500,000. Of course, you'll need to qualify for this lottery, but if you're able to get in, this will absolutely kind of bolster your chances purely from a statistical standpoint.
Okay, so it sounds like having multiple properties available, having multiple applications, having multiple chances to enter the lottery is really going to bolster it. So that makes sense, definitely. It's a little bit maybe confusing though, how they're laying it out with all these regions. Each for dispensaries, each region gets multiple licenses, but you can only apply once in each region. So let me ask you a hypothetical question here. So let's say I have 2 properties in Lexington, Kentucky. That's actually one of the weird regions. It has 6 instead of the 4 licenses offered, like most others, but regardless, let's say I have 2 properties in Lexington, Kentucky. Can I apply twice for this region with my 2 properties that I have in Lexington? You know, if I'm a local here and I really want to be in Lexington, how can I double down there or what?
Nope, unfortunately not. You would need to decide which of those properties of the 2 would be most ideal for your business operations and apply once for that region. You can't apply for the same region multiple times, even if you have multiple properties in that region. So you can apply for upwards of 11 times for those dispensary licenses, but that would be 11 times, 11 different regions, 11 different properties, not 11 times within the same region.
Very key detail to note. Yeah, don't want to waste money on properties you may not be able to use, or you may want to just structure your business to take full advantage of whatever properties you have available. Okay, so we've been mentioning regions a lot. Where do the regions apply? Is that across the board?
Yeah, so the regions are only applicable for those interested in the medical dispensary license. For cultivators, processors, safety compliance facilities, they don't have regions. So when we talk about the regions, that's specifically for those medical dispensary applicants.
Okay, so cultivators don't need to worry about the regions, but worry about the tiers more.
Yeah.
Their license numbers. Okay, great. All right, so we've covered that it's going to be a lottery, a qualified or a vetted lottery with a lot of information required. Property and funding is going to help you get ahead with multiple chances in the lottery. Sounds like there's a lot to do, and the window's coming up soon. So what can folks be doing now to get ready to submit? Is there a lot to do, and when do folks need to get started on these different areas?
Yeah, so it's kind of unbelievable. The application window is opening next month, less than a month away from today's date. Kind of stunning. I can't believe it came up to us that quickly. But right now, I would say it's really important to assess the financial capital for your business through financial modeling, locking down properties that you have in mind, really kind of ironing out the ownership structure for the business, that prospective cannabis business, and start any sort of business planning if you haven't done so yet. This is especially crucial if you're looking for outside investors and you need to actually get some funds available or some lines of credit for that sufficient capital requirement, and begin working on some of these required plans that we know are going to be required in the application. This is going to include a financial plan, an operational plan, a timeline for your operations, and a number of different additional details. I do know we have been busy at Canna Advisors trying to help people navigate through this, answer any questions they have, help them through the application process, and get them up to the finish line to submit a robust application. And I would say, in our experience working in a number of different states, working with other states with lotteries and qualified lotteries, we've seen the best applicants are the ones who start preparing early and are kind of getting a lot done right now, because that application window is fast approaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, takeaway there, start now. Certainly, one of the most, heavily vetted lotteries we've seen, qualified, or maybe an overqualified lottery, even some might say. So, yeah, definitely good to get going on that. Still time, but lots to do, lots to do. Okay, so you mentioned that the application window opens July 1st and closes on August 31st. I know folks are going to be chomping at the bit to submit as soon as possible. Folks want to, be first to market. They want their, best advantage here in this marketplace and their best advantage in the application period. So I'm wondering, would I be in a better position if I apply on the first day versus the last day of the window, or when do you recommend that I apply?
Yeah, so if you submit on the very first day, that July 1st date, or the very last day, that August 31st date, your chances are the same. We always recommend, kind of when in doubt, take your time. We've seen a number of individuals rush through the application process, really be eager to submit in like the first hour of the very first day that the application window opens, and then forget to upload a site plan or something like that. When in doubt, I think it's best to take your time, take that extra week or two, because we don't want to see you in a position where you have a number of deficiencies because of kind of a rush job, or potentially have a disqualifying application because you didn't take the time just to review everything to submit a really robust application. So take your time. If you are interested in applying, you have those 2 months to do so. And even if you submit on the very last day, August 31st, and let's say there are some deficiencies in the application, there's still time to correct these deficiencies. The Commonwealth will be reaching out and letting you know that there are deficiencies, and you'll have upwards until September 25th to address those deficiencies. But I'd say ideally you submit an application with no deficiencies, a perfect application, and you're ready to go and be entered into the lottery.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's always our focus, is making sure that you're going to submit an exceptional and perfect application. Is going to hopefully make it through all the qualifications and not result in deficiencies, because those can really be a huge headache to try to figure out what the state thinks might be wrong with your application and to make those changes. And I'll throw out there, it's great to take your time. Certainly want to do everything right, but remember, the deadline is the deadline. So you only have till that cutoff time to submit. If you don't make it, if something comes up, if there's an emergency, if there's a tech problem, if the portal isn't working, you can't get uploads or something like that, just know that your last date is your last date. Plan a few days ahead, at least, of the deadline for submitting, so that you leave yourself a little bit of cushion for things to go awry or things to change. The cannabis industry is always keeping us on our toes, so always got to have a little extra preparation time built in there. So, and speaking of those complex application processes, is there anything else, about that might trip people up, Dalton? Anything else to look out for?
Yeah, again, I've really found more than anything, it tends to be those small details which can really be frustrating if you get a deficiency about them, because you think, oh my gosh, I should have just crossed my T, dotted my I a little bit more closely. We've seen individuals where they forgot to upload a signed or notarized document, and that's where a deficiency comes in, or they forgot, again, like that one specific document, or misplaced a period or comma in certain instances. It's those details that are really good to just spend some time reviewing, going over with a really a fine-tooth comb, and making sure that everything is accurate more than anything. I will say that at the end of the day, the real process is to make sure, at least for us when we're working with clients, is to make sure that you're submitting a complete application. So we can help clients go through the application process, make sure that you're not forgetting anything, making sure, yep, you have your lease, or you have your deed, or you have the documentation for that timeline. We can't work with clients and guarantee accuracy on absolutely every single point. For instance, we don't know everyone's social security number. I hope you, as a prospective applicant, will know that information. But we can absolutely help individuals on the completeness side of things and make sure that you're not missing any sort of important details, such as those required plans or checking off all these attestations too.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good to know. I think everyone knows their own birthday, so they should be good there.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. You have to make sure everything is complete. And you want to give the graders as little work as possible, right? Just make it super easy to compare it to that guide and say, yep. Wow, model applicant right here. Let's get them into the lottery. Really want to make things as simple as possible. Okay, so after we apply, after we get through the deficiency period, what comes next? How do I know, when the lottery is, or how do I know if I won a license?
Yeah, so the exact date for the lottery hasn't been set yet, but we do know it's going to be happening sometime in October. I anticipate it'll probably be on or around October 15th. And working backwards from there, we do know October 1st is the day when applicants are going to be determined if they qualify for the lottery and if the lottery is going to be necessary or not. And then we can jump ahead from there past the lottery date. The winners of the lottery will then have a certain number of days, 15 days, to pay that licensing fee. So you will want to make sure that you have the funds available to pay a licensing fee after you've been awarded your license. And for those curious, the licensing fees can vary from $12,000 to $50,000 for cultivators, again, kind of based on whatever tier that you're interested in. The processor is $25,000, dispensaries are $30,000, and those safety compliance facilities are $12,000.
Yeah, okay, that's a good tip. You have to have that money pretty much on hand and waiting, because you're only going to have 15 days to pay that licensing fee. There's no time to go out and fundraise between getting your award and paying those funds. Two weeks probably isn't enough time. So yeah, definitely want to have that on hand and ready to go. And then after you are awarded that license, is there a certain number of days or structure there to get operational?
Yep. So luckily, I mean, we've seen some states where they require, once you get the license, you have to be up and running within 30 days. Luckily, that's not the case in Kentucky. You don't need to have everything built out and ready to go 30 days. For those interested in the medical dispensary license, for instance, you actually can't start selling until January 1st, 2025. So the new year, you'd still have to wait as a dispensary to actually receive patients who qualify with their qualifying medical conditions to receive any sort of medical cannabis or medical cannabis products. But you will have time, a year actually after you have been awarded a license, to become operational.
Okay, great. So there's a little bit of time there. Once you make it through the first payment, you have some time to get things up and running. Okay, good. Yeah, that's great. And then, for the retailers, yeah, they won't be able to sell until January 1st, 2025. Of course, they're going to need some product to sell. And so I would expect maybe, the cultivators, the manufacturers, maybe even producer licenses to be the ones they want to get up and running sooner. But I noticed that there's no producer license listed on the list of available licenses this round. So what can I do now, and what's going on with the producer license?
Yep. So there are going to be additional licensing rounds. This isn't the end of the road by any means. They aren't issuing producer licenses in this application round. Same with Tier 4 cultivation licenses. Those aren't being issued. But that doesn't mean I would argue that you should sit this licensing round out. That producer license allows you to cultivate and process. I would strongly recommend, if you really have an interest in one of those areas, still apply for either cultivation or processing. And then once that additional licensing round opens for a producer license, you can potentially already have a foot in the door, and you can hopefully then just continue on with your operations while doing another operation. Say you get awarded a cultivation license, then you can apply for a producer license, which would open the field for you to potentially do additional processing. We're still waiting on some additional details and dates on when a subsequent licensing round could be. It could be very soon. Kentucky, again, has been very efficient and on top of things, I would say, but it could take a little while. So whenever a licensing application window opens up, I always recommend that you submit an application for that so you can get your foot in the door and hopefully kind of capitalize on that first mover advantage. And you can always work with us, sign up with Canna Advisors as a retainer client, and we'd be happy to keep you updated and help you prepare with any sort of business planning or financial modeling for any of those licenses on the horizon.
All right, that sounds great. And yeah, I know folks are probably wanting to get into the market as soon as they can, and we'll keep an ear out for any future rounds that are announced as well. Hopefully, Kentucky gives us a bit of a heads up on when we can expect those down the road as well. So, okay, cool. Kentucky's done a great job of, putting out information thus far and making things available. Can you give us sort of an overview of any other resources applicants can keep an eye out for? I know you mentioned a few things as we were talking here, but yeah, what are some of those good resources?
Yeah, the state has been, in my opinion, pretty on top of everything resource-wise for applicants. Very recently, on the 31st, I believe, they just unveiled a whole video series, 6 videos on the application process, and we're able to kind of get a glimpse of the portal itself and what it's going to look like, how you register to actually submit the application, which is great to see. We have the regulations
Those
themselves.
videos may not be thrilling, but they are informational.
Yeah, they aren't as action-packed as, let's say, like Furiosa, playing in theaters now. I am the movie guy after all, but they're definitely worth a watch. They have a lot of information in them. We have the application requirements in the regulations themselves. They're not overly lengthy documents. I know I've read some state application requirements and documents that are in excess of 300 pages. These are not like that, so you can actually sit down and read them if you want in full. We have a very thorough application guide, which goes through and includes a checklist of everything you need in the application itself. Pretty substantial FAQ section as well, just kind of answering any sort of questions from a applicant perspective and even a prospective patient or caregiver perspective too. A lot of one-page summaries for each of the different license types. And one of the great things that Kentucky has done is they've also unveiled their interactive zoning tool. This is really important just to make sure that you're on top of compliant distance requirements. You can actually plug in an address and see if this is a compliant location or not. This is obviously more for like your own edification. If you are going to be submitting with an actual location in mind, you should definitely do your own work, really making sure that the location is compliant with these 1,000-foot radius distance requirements from schools, for instance. But this is a great kind of tool to initially gauge if the location is in good standing or not. And then you can always reach out and contact the state. They have a form that you can fill out. And if you have any other additional questions, you can always reach out to us at Canna Advisors. We have our own form that you can contact us with.
Awesome. Very helpful overview there. And yeah, I know there's a lot of resources. Of course, reach out to us if you have any questions. We're happy to sift through all the info for you. All right, and let's see. I think we're getting close to our last question here. I know, Dalton, that we don't want to judge an application process until it's totally over, until they've fully awarded all of the licenses. Knock on wood. We don't want to jinx them. But how do you think the Kentucky medical cannabis program rollout is going thus far? How does it maybe compare with any other markets you've worked in?
Yeah, I've been very impressed thus far. For me, some of the biggest kind of standouts have been their transparency, the number of meetings that they've had kind of leading up to this point with the Kentucky Medical Cannabis Work Group, and then a lot of the different subcommittees as well, and the consistent communication. I know we've worked in states and have seen states that change the requirements for the applications mid-application period, which kind of causes unnecessary additional confusion to an already kind of arduous process for applying for a license. And that's really, in our eyes, not fair for applicants who are trying their best to be really prepared and organized with everything. And Kentucky has been very clear with the information that is acceptable, isn't acceptable, what they're looking for, what's required, what's optional, and what the dates are. They haven't been kind of moving the goalposts really. They're one of the few states, I would say, too, that because of action taken Commonwealth, that's a big thing. There were a Commonwealth of Kentucky. They're one of the few Commonwealths and states which have actually moved up the application window, which has great to see. Their legislative body was very on top of making sure that there was going to be a smooth rollout, making sure especially that there was going to be enough plants kind of being grown, cultivated, processed prior to when those first sales can be made for the medical program itself in 2025. So I think right now they've been doing a very good job. There's always things that you'd like to see changed and improved, but some of the things are kind of out of our control. For instance, there was previous legislation trying to expand the number of qualifying conditions for patients in the state, which would obviously expand access to the medical market. Hopefully, once we have the market up and running, we'll see, or people in this Commonwealth will really see that, yes, this is a good program. Yes, we can be in a position to expand those qualifying conditions to other individuals and just kind of bolster the program even more. But kind of ramblings aside, I'd say this program is off to a very good start, and I've been really impressed with everything we've seen from them.
Yeah, and we're both currently knocking on wood right now so that, we don't throw a wrench in it, but they will hopefully continue on this very transparent and informative rollout process. So that's great news out of Kentucky. I know it puts applicants at ease. It's just really difficult when the state is always changing things. We're pivoting enough here in the cannabis industry. We don't need the state to throw any, or the Commonwealth to throw any more additional barriers out there for us. So, okay, well, with that, then let's go ahead and maybe turn it over to some questions. Let folks go ahead and submit any questions that they might have in the Q&A section, I think, or maybe some folks had thrown them in the chat as well. That's fine. While we're letting some people enter some information, I'll just want to remind you all of our Minnesota webinar that's coming up next week, June 13th. That's 1 week from today, same time, same place. So if you happen to be interested in other emerging markets, namely Minnesota, please go ahead and join that event. We'll have kind of a similar informational session there, going over everything that's going on in Minnesota. So go ahead and sign up there. All right, let's turn to some questions then. Let's see. Looks like our first question, is there an avenue for delivery? I don't think a delivery license, huh? What is it? What's going on with delivery, Dalton?
Yeah, so there is not a specific delivery license. We have seen some other cannabis markets, like New York most recently, that would be explicitly offering a delivery license. Kentucky is not going to be offering that, but delivery is an option that will be available for medical dispensaries. You will be able to have delivery options available to any sort of medical patients. One of the key things you will want to pay attention to is one of the required plans. That operational plan does have some specifications on steps that you're going to have to do for distribution of cannabis. Let's say you're a cultivator and you're distributing cannabis to a processor. You'll want to have some details, kind of a summary of the steps that you're going to be taking to ensure prevention of theft and diversion, things like that. And the same is true when it comes to delivery as well. I was actually just reviewing some of those regulations the other day. So you'll be able to have delivery options available as a medical dispensary, and you'll just want to take the necessary steps to make sure that your delivery is obviously compliant with all the different state regulations. Oh, Summer, I think you might be muted.
Sure am. Sure am. Good catch. Good catch. Okay, let's see. We got another question popped up here. Will there be two lotteries in the regions with six licenses for dispensaries? Will the drawing or selection for the metro areas, Louisville, Lexington, be separate from the drawing for the other licenses in those same regions? Do we know yet?
Not yet. I would anticipate it would all be within the same kind of day and lottery process. They will just pull some additional license winners for that, because as that question kind of alludes to, there are 11 regions. All of the regions for these medical dispensary licenses will have 4 medical dispensaries licenses be awarded for them, except for 2 of the regions. Because of just the populations associated with these 2 regions, they will have 6. So I imagine how the process will go is that those additional 2 licenses for each of those 2 regions will just be pulled alongside all the other regions.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that makes sense too. Usually how we've seen it done in other places. Let's see, are there social equity provisions included at all in this round? Didn't hear mention of those.
Nope. No social equity provisions here. We have seen some other markets where there's a really big focus on social equity, where they even have specific licensing grounds dedicated to social equity applicants or those who qualify for such. I'm sure you can learn a lot more about social equity in Minnesota in our upcoming Minnesota webinar too. That is a market I know with social equity provisions, but as far as Kentucky is concerned, nope, there's no social equity provisions specifically enumerated in this licensing round, at least.
Okay, great, thanks. And we have another question here. Is there going to be a distribution model or distributor license for transferring products from manufacturers to dispensaries, or would the manufacturer be able to transport those products?
Yeah, so similarly, you wouldn't apply for a specific distributor license if you're distributing cannabis from a cultivator to a processor or to a safety compliance facility or to another licensed cannabis business. That would be included within the license that you're awarded. You would be able to distribute cannabis between other licensed cannabis businesses. You'll obviously need to make sure that you have a updated manifest, that you have in the regulations, they state that you need to have a number of security cameras available to watch the medical cannabis products that is being distributed, along with the driver, who is the individual distributing said products between the medical cannabis businesses. But yes, you will be able to distribute those products, and you don't need to apply for a separate distributor license to do this.
Perfect. Great to know. Great to know. Let's see if we have any other questions here. I think we may have covered them all. Make sure I check the chat and the Q&A area here. And if we didn't get to your question or we missed it, please just shoot it over. We're happy to answer any questions afterwards, any follow-ups that anyone might have. Let's see. Oh, just the one last question was how do we go about submitting the application, Dalton? Do we have to send in a big binder of paper like the olden days?
Yep, you will not need to submit a giant binder with a lot of printed pages for this application. You will register online and create an online account when you are going to be submitting your application. Internet access is required to do this, so make sure you have a good computer, good Wi-Fi available as well to do this, and then you'll just do this all in an online form. And if you're interested in kind of seeing what this portal will look like, I definitely recommend checking out those videos as well that were just uploaded into their businesses page on the Team Kentucky Medical Cannabis group's website, along with that application licensing guide. They have some screenshots available there of what the application portal actually looks like.
Great. Okay. Yeah, and we don't see that in every state, so some good information there from Kentucky. And thank you, Dalton. And then let's see. We'll take this maybe as our last question. This is a big question. How big is the retail sales projection for this medical market? And I might chime in and say that's a kind of a complicated question. I think that might go into our secret sauce a little bit. But if you work with us on financial modeling projections, we are happy to go through all of those numbers and every detail that goes into that market. But Dalton, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so I would add Kentucky is kind of a unique example. They've given us information on the anticipated number of individuals who qualify for the medical cannabis program. I believe that figure is actually around 45,000 right now based on those 6 qualifying medical conditions. But uniquely, they will also be allowing, in some cases, visitors who qualify from different states to also access the market. The biggest kind of thing with that to bear in mind is that's really hard to judge the number of people who will use this and who will qualify accordingly as a potential visitor to the Commonwealth to then have access to the medical program itself. So that figure can really range wildly. But I would say that Kentucky has a pretty thriving tourism industry as well. I wouldn't be surprised if for a lot of individuals, they'd be interested in trying to get access to this, mainly because some of the other states, especially to the south, have a bit more restrictive programs. And Kentucky is in a prime position to really kind of dominate this area. I think even more so than their neighbors to the north, given how their overall rollout has been. So I would say I don't want to do an exact figure just yet, which is kind of a lawyery response, but I will say it has the potential to be fairly sizable based on kind of everything we've seen so far, based on the number of individuals who can qualify and have access to the medical program, and what we anticipate this program's growth to be.
Yeah, definitely the potential growth is a good point to make there. And if you're paying any attention to Ohio right now, you're seeing that Ohio's rolling out its adult use program, and they're exclusively allowing their medical licensees to open up first and get that first to market advantage. So they're haven't even announced when their next licensing period might be for those new applicants to the market. So their medical operators are really getting the first jump here. So yeah, could see something similar in Kentucky.
Yeah, I would say one of the most most advantageous things that an individual can do is try to enter the medical market, because there's often a lot of different advantages and perks that come with operating in the medical market and then transitioning into the adult use market whenever the state or the Commonwealth decide to go that route.
Yep, exactly. And then this maybe kind of segues into our next question here. How many applicants do you anticipate for those 48 dispensary licenses?
So I do anticipate a sizable number to apply, but I would not be surprised if a decent number of those actually don't qualify, mainly because of the sufficient capital requirements. A lot of people might not be able to showcase that they have $150,000 in capital to get the business up and running, because a lot of people are kind of relying on or hoping that the license will be their entry point into then raising capital. And the property requirements too. Not everyone has a property lined up or a potentially supportive landlord that they can find. So that those are kind of two, I would say, larger barriers to entry in this marketplace. So that will immediately, I say, winnow down the number of applicants who are qualifying. But personally, I see this more in the hundreds of qualified applicants as opposed to in New York, where we saw an excess of 7,000 applicants. I don't by any means see that happening.
Right. We won't hold you to that, but it's a good guess. I like it. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for all those questions. Let's see if we have any. We have a few minutes left. I think we've covered them all. Yeah, amazing questions. And thank you for your thoughtful answers there, Dalton. And thank you everyone for joining today. It was really a pleasure chatting with you and answering all the questions. As I mentioned before, this is being recorded, so we'll go ahead and send this around afterwards. And again, if you have any follow-up questions or anything, please do reach out to us. You can visit our website, thinkcanna.com, and reach out there on the contact form to follow up with us later. And yeah, I think that's all we have planned here for today. I appreciate all your time. Thank you so much, Dalton, for joining us and giving us all that excellent info.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Have a good one.